a priest and the congregation are deep in prayer inside a church. A while later, that same priest is seen borrowing money from Han, who is sitting on the church steps. Han is a low-level enforcer working as a debt collector for Daesan Industries. One day, Han confronts a man who has been avoiding repayment, but the man keeps making excuses about his hardships. Frustrated, threatens to bring an end to their troubles and starts pouring gasoline around the place. To scare him even more, he takes a swig of it. Terrified, the man hands over the money he had set aside for his shop's rent and his child's education. Before leaving, Han returns a portion of the cash for the child's schooling and takes the rest. As he steps out, he suddenly moves to the side and starts throwing up, most likely from drinking the gasoline. Later, he goes to a Chinese restaurant, a known hub for gambling, drinking, and shady dealings. There, his boss gives him his next assignment, collecting a debt from a man who has fallen into a coma. Since the man can't pay, the responsibility now falls on his daughter, Ho Yong. Han heads to the hospital with two men. They enter the room where the patient is admitted, but a young girl steps out of the washroom and firmly tells them to leave, saying her father needs to be cleaned up. Han asks to speak with her and tries to show the legal documents, but she responds harshly. Seeing her resistance, he orders his men to move the patient's bed. She desperately tries to stop them, but when she realizes they won't back down, she gives in. A few moments later, she signs the papers, agreeing to repay her father's debt in monthly installments with interest. As they leave the hospital, Han pauses for a moment, finding himself thinking about Ho Yong. The next day, as Han steps out of a shop and walks toward a traffic light, he notices Ho Yong in her school uniform, waving goodbye to her friends. Curious, he follows her to the hospital, where she picks up her father's treatment bill from the reception. He watches as exhaustion washes over her face upon seeing the remaining balance. One evening, as Ho Yong leaves the bank and heads home, Han suddenly calls out to her. Shocked to see him, she is even more surprised when he invites her for a drink, saying he needs to talk. They sit across from each other in a restaurant, and he tells her she shouldn't have signed the papers without fully understanding them. Confused and frustrated, Ho Yong stands up, angrily declaring that she will pay the debt on her own before storming out. The next day, when Ho Yong enters her father's hospital room, she becomes furious upon seeing Han there. However, instead of confronting him, she chooses to ignore him and walks out. When she notices him following her, she turns around and firmly tells him that she doesn't need his help with the hospital bills or the debt. But Han reminds her that the amount is too much for her to handle alone and insists that she should cooperate with him. Their disagreement escalates into a heated argument in the middle of the hospital. Afterward, Han returns to his office, which has the atmosphere of a shady business. There, he asks his boss to return the contract to Ho Yong as a gesture of goodwill since she had signed it under pressure. The following day, Han finds Ho Yong at the bank where she works. He tries to ask her to meet up, but she remains calm and tells him to leave. However, he refuses to budge, causing a scene until her seniors call the police. Both of them end up at the station, where the officer sides with Han, stating that reminding someone to pay their debt is not against the law. As they leave, he once again asks her to meet him the next day. That night, Han keeps thinking of a way to free Ho Yong from the contract. Eventually, he comes up with an idea. He visits her at the hospital and explains that he has created a memo that can override the contract. The deal is simple. For every hour she spends with him, he will mark a box on the memo. Once all the boxes are filled, the contract will be hers, meaning she could be freed from the debt. Ho Yong refuses at first, but he hands her his number in case she changes her mind. The next day, Ho Yong couldn't stop thinking about how the hospital had stopped giving her father medicine because the bills remained unpaid. Left with no choice, she finally decided to accept Han's offer. She now stood before him, agreeing to the deal he proposed the night before. Their conversation turned tense as they discussed what they would actually do while spending time together. However, at their next meeting, they officially set the deal in motion, with Ho Yong firmly reminding him to keep his word. From that day on, they met for a few hours daily. During Ho Yong's lunch break, they would go to a restaurant, but she never touched her food, only Han would eat. Days passed, and one day, she saw Han helping bathe her father. At that moment, she realized that despite being a thug, he had a decent side too. The next time they were at the restaurant, Ho Yong finally picked up her chopsticks and started eating. Seeing this, Han couldn't hide his happiness. From then on, their meetings became more comfortable, whether they were walking together or eating at a cafe. She was no longer completely silent. Over time, they started growing fond of each other. Meanwhile, in the marketplace, two men were wrecking a shop. When Han arrived, he shoved the owner inside before leaving with the two men. Ho Yong happened to witness everything and completely misunderstood the situation. The next day, she entered her father's hospital room and started moving his wheelchair downstairs. When Han approached and asked what was wrong, she coldly told him that she would repay the debt soon. Han was hurt by her harsh words, and in his frustration, he sought comfort from another woman he used to see. Drunk and emotional, Han went to the hospital to take back what he said earlier. He told Ho Yong that he didn't love her, but after that night, whenever he visited the restaurant where they used to go together, he found himself missing her terribly. One day, while Han was having lunch in his office, a worker came in asking for Ho Young's father's case file. When Han asked why, the worker told him that her father had passed away. Ho Yong was now completely alone, sitting in the funeral hall, lost in sorrow. Suddenly, the door opened, and Han walked in. He bowed in front of her late father's photo before quietly asking if she had eaten. Han took charge of all the funeral arrangements, calling friends and relatives to pay their respects. He stayed by her side in the following days, making sure she was not alone. As time passed, Ho Yong began to see him differently, not just as a thug, but as someone with a kind and gentle side hidden beneath his tough exterior. One day, after dropping her off at the bank, Ho Yong asked if they could talk since she still had a few minutes. They went to the terrace, standing side by side against the wall. She turned to him and asked if he stayed with her out of pity or if he truly liked her. Already knowing the answer, she then asked why he liked her. Han was at a loss for words, and their conversation ended in a quiet yet deep moment between them. From then on, it was clear they had found happiness in each other. 2 years later, Han sat inside a prison cell, carefully sewing a heart with wool and a needle. Today was his last day. He was finally going to be free. After his release, he went straight to the police station to ask about his family's whereabouts since they had moved. An old officer gave him their new address, and Han left, joking that he had been a model prisoner. Outside the house, he waited until his niece, now a grown young girl, arrived with his sister-in-law. They were happy to see him. Later, he met his brother, who still held resentment toward him. It was also revealed that Han was supposed to serve 1 more year, but he was released early. He explained to his family that it was because of his good behavior. Reuniting with his father, Han saw that he was in poor health. This led to an argument with his brother, blaming him for not taking better care of their father. Meanwhile, Ho Yong was on her way home from work when she saw Han sitting on the stairs in front of her house. For a moment, she was speechless, then finally asked how he found her. When he tried to give her a bag, she refused to take it and said some painful words. Without another word, she went inside, leaving him behind. Han quietly hung the bag on the wall outside her house. Later, in the washroom, Han lathered his face to shave when, suddenly, his nose started bleeding heavily. Moments later, he collapsed on the floor. Flashing back to his time in prison, medical tests had revealed that he had a brain tumor. This was the real reason for his early release. He had only 3 months left to live. 2 years ago, Han was at his happiest whenever he was with Ho Yong. One day, he went to her house and found her hand-washing clothes. He teased her, asking why they even bought a washing machine if she wasn't using it. Ho Yong invited him to go hiking, but he refused at first. Later, he changed his mind and even bought her a jacket for the trip. At the mountain, Han rested his head on Ho Young's lap while lying on a bench. She pleaded with him to leave his dangerous job and start a new life. She talked about their future, owning a small chicken restaurant, getting married, and raising a child together. Not long after, Han stood in front of his boss, saying he was quitting. However, his boss convinced him to stay for one last big job before leaving for good. As part of this, Han had to collect all the private loans his boss had given out. This led him to the priest, demanding repayment of an old debt. While at the priest's office, Han managed to find a locker, but as soon as the priest opened it, everything went black. Han collapsed. That was when he first learned about his brain tumor. The doctor explained his condition and the treatments available, but it all felt overwhelming and difficult for him to understand. That night, while having dinner, Ho Yong handed him some money, her late father's insurance and her personal savings. She excitedly talked about their plans, unaware that the man she loved might not even have much time left. The next day, they visited an agent to look at some shops, but the one Jo-hong liked was too expensive. She told Han that they could start small instead. Han, however, wanted to buy the shop and knew that more money would be needed to start the business. He went to his boss and accepted the big job he had offered. He risked all the savings they had set aside for the business. While at a gambling session, a group of thugs stormed in, stealing everything. In an attempt to save the money, Han was badly beaten. Meanwhile, Jo-hong was waiting at the agent's shop, expecting Han to show up so they could sign the contract for the shop. At the Chinese restaurant, Han sat drinking, feeling like he had ruined her dreams. When Jo-hong arrived, she sat at the table next to his and began asking questions, knowing he had no good answers. She wanted to know why he had gone against his promise to her. Already filled with guilt, Han, instead of explaining or admitting his mistake, blamed Jo-hong and claimed he never loved her. Devastated, Jo-hong walked away, and Han, still angry, got into a fight with some boys. The situation escalated, and he ended up getting arrested for assaulting police officers. He was sentenced to 3 years in jail. Months later, after the police discovered his illness, he was released early. The scene shifts to the present day, where Han goes to confront Do-chul. His former boss, now working in a large factory, mocks Han for bringing up old grudges and refuses to give him any money. The next day, in a fit of anger, Han destroys parts of Do-chul's factory and is later locked in a refrigerated storage space for hours. After being dragged out, he shows Do-chul his medical reports and asks for one last favor as a friend. Moved by the news of his illness, Do-chul finally agrees to give him the money. Later, Han waits for Jo-hong and, when she arrives, he tries to give her the money. She immediately refuses and begs him to leave. Han attempts to explain his situation, but she won't listen. In a moment of emotion, he pulls her into an embrace, and despite her protests, she can't break free. Afterward, when Han returns home, he gets into another fight with his brother, who accuses him of being involved in yet another brawl. That night, he has a heart-to-heart conversation with his father. A few days later, Han's sister-in-law asks him to leave the house due to the ongoing fights. Han packs his things and leaves. As he leaves the city, Han sees Jo-hong with 2 other people. He watches from a distance, noticing how happy she looks, and smiles, perhaps feeling content that she's moving on. However, just as he turns to leave, he collapses, bleeding heavily. Han wakes up in the hospital, confused, and goes to the reception to settle the bills. He is shocked to discover that Jo-hong has already paid them. Jo-hong, having seen the situation, learns about his illness and how he hadn't received treatment while in jail. Realizing that the man she loves doesn't have much time left, she decides to stay by his side. She approaches him, but when she sees him standing across the alley, she stops. Han notices her and also pauses. Their eyes meet, and Jo-hong starts crying uncontrollably. Han, feeling helpless, joins her in tears. From that moment on, Jo-hong stays with him during every treatment. She takes him to the hospital roof for fresh air and reads to him. Every night, she sleeps by his hospital bed, holding his hand. But as expected, the inevitable happens. Han's condition worsens with each passing day. His family is informed of his illness. One night, while giving him a bath, Jo-hong realizes that he has passed away. She whispers her love to him one last time. At Han's funeral, his father, brother, and nephew grieve deeply. Jo-hong, now alone once more, also mourns his loss. But Han had told his father how much he loved Jo-hong and asked him to look after her after he was gone, knowing she would have no one else to turn to. The movie ends with Jo-hong sitting on the bus, returning home from work, crying as she remembers Han. Did you like our movie recap? Please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. To be updated for new movie recaps, hit the notification bell.